When I was a teenager, I encountered something evil. Something outside the rational boundaries I believed the world had. A single night changed how I viewed the world and my place in it. I realized how vulnerable we are and how close demons walk beside us. It began as most summer Friday nights. My parents were away at the cottage, and my boyfriend Mike and a few friends came over to watch some bad horror movies. The night's main feature was a triple bill of the film series Ouija Board. The first movie is about a girl making contact with a spirit she thinks is kind and helpful, but turns out to be anything but. I can't tell you if the rest of the series changes that up, because I've never seen the last two. That night, bored with the predictability of the first installment, we opted to skip the next two. And since that night, well, anything to do with Ouija boards is strictly off limits. I remember the conversation started as my friend Matt got off the couch to pop the disc out. Sorry guys, that was predictable and not even awful enough to be fun. Do you want to head out to Blockbuster and see if there's anything else? Before any of us could answer, Matt's girlfriend, Jessica, leaned forward like she had something secret to say. Do you think Ouija boards really work? I don't know why everyone else laughed. For me, I just thought it was funny to be so serious about it after watching a cheesy movie. But looking back on it, I wish I'd taken it even more seriously than Jessica. The people using it are just moving the pointer themselves. Mike mimed pushing an imaginary pointer around a board while looking side to side as if pretending to not look where it went, except for the quick peeks he'd take every now and then. Chris shook her head. That's not true. I used one with my cousin a few years ago, and it said stuff about people in the room neither of us knew. Mike chuckled. Did it claim to be one of their relatives? Chris just shook her head. I don't think so. We just started asking it random questions, and I think someone asked if it knew one of their relatives who had passed away. How does a random spirit know more about the people you're hanging out with than you do? Mike asked. I mean, do you just learn everything about everyone when you die? Damn, that's scarier than some random ghost. Imagine all the crap your parents find out about you when they die. That's reason enough not to use a Ouija board. Chris didn't seem willing to let it go. I thought at the time whatever was said during her Ouija board session with her cousin must have made a huge impression on her. I'm telling you, it was real. You shouldn't joke about things if you haven't even experienced them. Mike raised his hands in supplication. Okay, fair enough. But I find it hard to believe it's some random ghost that knows so much. Maybe it's some kind of psychic phenomenon where people in the room somehow influence it. Matt had put the disc case in his bag and sat back down. Really? Being psychically influenced by people in the room is more realistic than ghosts? Mike just shrugged. I think it's more realistic people in the room know stuff about themselves as opposed to a random ghost. I mean, really, are spirits just bored and hang around waiting for someone to call? Imagine there's just a bank of phones in the afterworld, and when they ring, a stampede of bored spirits trample over one another to answer. I eyed the hall closet. You know, if you really wanted to test it out, my parents have a Ouija board. Really, Claire? Mike's voice dripped with mock fear. Didn't you see what happened in the movie? We could all die. I shot him a hard glare. So you're going to talk a big game and then chicken out on following through? Mike gave an ugh. I'm not saying that and you know it. I don't care. Sure, get the Ouija board out. Let's see if we can summon some all-knowing ghost. I went to the hall closet. On the top shelf was a stack of board games left untouched since my brothers and I were kids. At the bottom of the pile was an old Hasbro Ouija board. Ooh, cardboard and plastic to summon ghosts from the company who brought you Monopoly and Clue. Jessica raised her hand with exaggerated excitement. Oh, we should play Clue after this. I love that game. We could, I said. My parents were big on board game nights when we were younger. I think we've got every popular one and probably some you've never even heard of. I went to put the box down on the floor in the middle of the room. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Mike knelt down beside me, picking the box up. If I'm getting roped into this, I want the full experience. We need a table, mood lighting, the whole deal. Simon pushed his glasses up his nose. I agree. It seems a shame to sit on the floor when we could use your dining room table and put out some candles. I guess that would be okay. But don't put anything on the table that might mark it. My mom would freak. Maybe put some coasters under the candles just to make sure. Mike winked at me. Nice. Mike dropped the box in the middle of the dining room table and went from there into the kitchen. The light flickered, followed by a loud pop that plunged the kitchen into darkness. I ran to see if he was okay. What happened? It's nothing. The bulb just burned out. Kind of ironic timing considering I was looking for candles. The six of us, myself, Mike, Matt, Jessica, Simon, and Chris, arranged ourselves around the table. Mike and Simon lit 4 candles, placing one on either end of the table and 2 on a hutch. I opened the box and pulled out the contents. So who's going to be on the pointer? It was your idea, so I think you should be one, Mike said. And you'll join me because you love me, right? He laughed and placed a fingertip on the pointer with me. You should have a third, Simon said, placing his fingertip on the pointer with us. More people means less chance of getting possessed. Matt openly guffawed. Where did you hear that crap? I've already watched the other 2 Witchboard movies, Simon said. I'm a certified expert. Jesus, you already knew how bad that movie was and still let us watch it? Shut up. It's a classic. You guys just don't appreciate the deeper layers. Mike groaned. Are we contacting spirits or arguing about movies? Jessica got up from the table. We should get a pen and paper to write what it says. Does your mom keep any paper or pens in the kitchen? Oh, right. There's a pad and pen in the 3rd drawer beside the oven. She returned in a few seconds, pen and paper at the ready. Okay, I began, removing the instructions from the box. I couldn't help but laugh at their simplicity. So, put your fingers lightly on the planchette. Oh, right, that's what that's called. Then we each take turns asking questions. Don't break contact before saying goodbye, Simon added. It's bad luck. Seriously? Mike looked across the table at Chris. How do you put up with this guy? She shrugged. Sometimes I wonder. Because I'm awesome and caring. It's not a bad thing to want to keep your friends from getting possessed. The planchette lay silent beneath our fingertips. Simon stared at the board intently, while Mike gave me a shrug. I don't know why, but I felt a sense of disappointment. I mean, I never expected anything incredible, but the longer nothing happened, the cheaper the plastic felt beneath my fingers, and the whole thing felt like just another board game. I sensed Mike's growing impatience, and I knew if nothing happened soon, he'd not only give up, but he'd gloat about how the whole thing was nonsense. Even if a part of me agreed, in that moment, I didn't want that to be how things ended. Is anybody here with us? I finally asked. Dead for minutes before, the planchette staggered and moved in lazy circles around the board. Mike gave me a look with a raised, suspicious eyebrow. I'm not moving it. Simon shook his head. Me neither. Mike frowned. It's probably some form of subconscious muscle movement or static electricity or something. Matt laughed. That is some next-level pseudoscience bullshit. Yeah, because ghosts is next-level realism, Mike growled. After several seconds of aimless moving around the board, the planchette settled into a figure 8 pattern, and then pointed to yes. Simon leaned closer. What is your name? The planchette moved with more purpose. When it settled back into the figure 8 pattern, Jessica read the name it spelled. Abacus. Isn't that some kind of ancient calculator? Simon sighed. I'd say calling it that is an oversimplification, but you're not entirely wrong. Still, it's kind of an odd name to call itself. Do you think that's a real name, or one it's chosen? It's obviously not a real name. Mike's tone sounded more like he was speaking to a 4-year-old rather than a ghost. Are you a friendly ghost? The planchette looped around the board, forming 3 circle 8s before pointing to yes. You should be more respectful, Simon whispered. What if it wasn't friendly? Mike chuckled. Sure, sorry, Abacus. He sounded as far from sorry as you could get. Can you tell us anything about the afterlife? Jessica asked. Chris rubbed her arms and gave a little brrr. I got the craziest chill when you asked that. Matt reached a hesitant hand toward her bare arm. Weird. I don't feel that cold, but it feels colder where you're sitting. It's an older house, I offered. The heat and AC are never even. Nope, Mike said. She's totally having a paranormal experience. The planchette's spelling something, Simon said, bringing our attention back to the board. It had been performing the non-stop figure 8 motion that I'd become almost numb to the sensation of it traveling around the board. Simon read out the letters while Jessica picked up her pen and paper. Boring, Jessica read once it finished. That's not exactly what I expected. Is that why you're communicating with us? I asked. The pointer showed yes, but also moved to no. Yes and no? Why no? Oh, for God's sakes, it's just messing with us, Mike said. Are you seriously telling me neither of you is pushing this thing around? Simon and I both shook our heads no. Are you being forced to speak to us? Simon asked. No, comes the answer. Do you need something from us? Matt asked. The planchette moved toward yes, but veered away before settling there. Are you toying with us? Mike asked. Just based on his tone, I was kind of surprised he was still keeping his fingers in place. I half expected him to stand up and walk away. Maybe, Jessica read after another series of indicated letters. Mike groaned. Screw you, man. The planchette glided from letter to letter. I like you. Jessica's voice trembled a bit as she read that. Mike leaned back in his chair, casting a smug glare at the board. Come at me. Oh, wait, you're dead. I guess you'll just have to wait. The planchette started jumping from letter to letter. It moved so fast we just started yelling the letters out so Jessica could focus on writing. This makes no sense, she said. It's saying the same thing over and over, but it's all gibberish. Chris flew out of her seat, knocking the chair over. It landed with a bang that made us all jump. In the kitchen, she stammered. There was a weird shadow in the kitchen. Relax, Chris, I said. It's just the headlights from some cars passing outside. No. It was a human-shaped shadow, I swear. Relax, Mike said. It's a Hasbro product, not a demon portal. Jess, what do all these letters say? G, N, I, M, O, C, M, A, I, she read. Let me see that. Matt reached over to snatch the pad of paper from Jessica. A creak came from the living room. Chris grabbed Matt from behind. We should stop. Matt reached up to grip her shoulder. It's fine. Just the floor shifting. It happens in the summer all the time. Oh, holy crap. If you read it backwards, it says, I am coming. The planchette moved again. E-R-E-H-M-A-I. Matt's eyes widened. I am here. Mike gave me a, can you believe these crazies look? But his expression quickly changed. I still don't know whether he saw something behind me, or if it was some kind of internal realization, but his derisive look melted into wide-eyed horror. We're done, he said, and pulled his hand away from the planchette. Don't break contact without saying goodbye, Simon said. It's dangerous. Simon and I guided the planchette to goodbye. I'm sure he realized the same thing I did. We physically pushed the planchette that time. Until then, it moved with such determination we almost lost our grip, but it had gone dead. Whatever energy existed within and through it before was completely gone. Mike paced in the living room. He kept shooting nervous glances around the room and scratching at his chest like he was having an allergic reaction. I left the table and reached out for him. What's wrong? He ducked away from my touch. Again, he seemed to see something I couldn't. I've got to go. He made it to the front door before his words registered. What? I ran to catch him before he got out the door. Mike, where are you going? What's wrong? The look in his eyes as they darted back and forth, filled with dread, froze me. For the first time, the terror I saw made me feel like there truly was something else in the room with us. As he walked out the door, my vision went blank. I still don't know whether I blacked out for a second, or if something so dark and massive passed before me that it blotted everything out. Not until I saw Mike's car pulling out of the driveway could I finally draw a breath. It burned my lungs. Claire? Jessica put her hand on my shoulder. I nearly crumbled under its weight. A few minutes went by. I'm not sure what I was waiting for. I knew he wasn't coming back. I pulled out my cell phone and tried to call him. When he didn't answer, I sent a text begging him to call. He didn't. He never did. Because I found out the next day, Mike died in a car crash after leaving my house. 3 days later, 2 men showed up at my door. The one is a slim man with smooth dark skin, short cropped hair, and a tan suit that fits him as if it was custom made. The other is shorter, rounder, and his graying hair and wrinkled face suggest he's a fair bit older. The blue of his suit is inconsistent as patches have faded and become worn. Claire Taylor? The younger one asks. When I confirm I am, he identifies himself as a police detective Thompson, and the older man as his partner, Detective Horvath. They both produce badges with a practiced ease. We were hoping we could ask you a few questions about Michael Williams, Miss Taylor. Are your parents home? Since you're 18, you can't speak to us without them, but if you'd be more comfortable, we can wait until they're also available. Am I in trouble? No, Detective Horvath waves my concern away. We know you didn't do anything wrong. We're just looking to cross our T's and dot our I's. It's always a horrible thing when a young person passes away, so we want to make sure everything is clear. My parents weren't home, but still, I invited them in. Looking back on it, I guess that wasn't such a wise decision, but I was so numb and in a fog. I just wanted it all to be done. Just so we're clear, you were Mr. Williams' girlfriend, correct? I nodded in response. Detective Thompson asks all the questions. His older partner just sits there taking notes. What time did he leave the house? I'm unsure at first, but I remembered I texted him, so I pulled out my cell phone to check the time. Had he been drinking or done any drugs? Oh God, no. Mike was a fitness fanatic. He said drugs would ruin his performance and alcohol would give him a gut. Actually, none of us are really into that. Despite my sadness, I actually managed to chuckle. I think we all kind of just followed his lead, like we knew he'd be disappointed if we did any of that stuff. Was he upset when he left? I tried to think of the right words to say. Upset? Yes, most definitely. But it went way beyond that. I'd say he looked more scared. Scared? This seems to surprise Detective Thompson. What were you doing before he left? We just watched some scary movie and... Was he scared because of the movie? No, not at all. It was kind of stupid. I mean, I guess when I think about it, even getting scared over a Ouija board sounds kind of stupid too, but... Did you say a Ouija board? Detective Thompson asked. Even Detective Horvath seemed to lean a little forward as if in anticipation of my answer. Well, yeah, I mean, we watched a movie about a Ouija board, and then I said my parents had one, so we used it. And then Mike... I had to fight back tears. Can you tell us what messages you received from the Ouija board before your boyfriend left? This snaps me back from my grief, not only because it's the first time Detective Horvath has asked a question, but also because it strikes me as odd. Why does that matter? Detective Horvath clears his throat. I'm just asking because we're trying to piece together Mr. Williams' state of mind. From what you've said, he was frightened, maybe not thinking rationally. I'm wondering if it had something to do with the Ouija board. It spelled, I am coming backwards a few times, then said, I am here. I guess, yeah, that's when Mike seemed to kind of freak out. After that, I don't know. It was almost like he was seeing something I wasn't. I can't explain it. Mike was never like that about anything. Detective Thompson, could you give me a few minutes alone with Miss Taylor? Detective Horvath said. Detective Thompson seemed to hesitate, like he was worried about what Detective Horvath was going to say to me. Looking back, I guess he did tell me something he shouldn't have. Okay, I'll wait out in the car. Be careful, Dave. Detective Thompson said his goodbyes and left. Detective Horvath pulled off his thick glasses and gave them a wipe with a cloth he pulled from his jacket. Once they were back in place, he leaned so far forward he braced his arms on his legs. I'm sure you know we can't say much about in-progress investigations, but, well, I feel like as a father, I need to tell you this. I'll be honest, I don't believe too much in all that occult hocus-pocus stuff, but I've also seen enough things on this job that I know you should always keep an open mind, and you should follow your gut. So, I hope you won't share what I'm about to tell you in its entirety, but you should tell people what they need to hear to stay safe. I felt like my mind was spinning. Are you saying something about the Ouija board hurt Mike? He frowns. This is the third death we've investigated in the past 4 weeks. In every one, before the person died, they were present while someone was using a Ouija board. In all cases, it delivered messages similar to what yours did, and in all cases, the deceased showed signs of struggle, and we found words clawed into their bodies. Clawed. That word stuck out to me, not just because it flashed horrible scenes of mutilation into my mind, but mostly because it didn't sound like something you would say a person did. It was the word you chose to describe an animal. Or... I can't say how, But as I watched him struggle with whether he should say the final message left on Mike's body, I already knew what he was going to say before the words left his mouth. Detective Horvath took a big breath and let it out with a sigh. He finally looked me dead in the eye. Carved into all the bodies were the words, "I was here."